Hey everyone. So before I get started, I have something that I think would be a fun icebreaker. I know icebreakers are really lame, but this one's kind of funny. So I just want to go through everyone and have them tell me the grossest flavor of toothpaste they could think of. So my personal one is blue cheese. So, Patrick, you have a gross flavor of toothpaste?
To be like one you've seen.
No.
Okay.
I've not seen blue cheese flavored toothpaste.
Gem socks.
Gem socks.
Hamburger.
Hamburger.
Baking soda?
Baking soda. That's like a normal toothpaste.
Fecal matter.
Okay, yeah. Adam?
I was gonna say expired milk.
Expired milk. Sam? Egg?
Coconut milk.
Coconut milk. That sounds nice.
Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts?
Baked.
You don't know?
Toe fungus.
Toe fungus.
And I have a good ending one. I once went to the Rock Horror Show one night.
This is real.
Yes. Now, for anybody who's been there, they have the virgins at the very beginning. People go and see it for the first time. They all come forward and they have to do something. So what they did was they had someone a glass of water, and people would brush their teeth and spit it out. When you pass on to the next person and brush your teeth, spit it out. And the very last person had to drink the whole thing.
Ugh. Okay. So we had some other good ones today at work. So salt and vinegar was a good one. Habanero. So might go into the gross toothpaste industry here soon. But anyway, this is not a talk about toothpaste. It's a talk about building complex views with RecyclerView and mainly with Epoxy. So the kind of structure of this talk is I'm going to show you a view. I'm going to show you how you would build it in RecyclerView, and then I'm going to show you how to build it better with Epoxy. So first, who am I? I'm a senior mobile developer here at Atomic Robot, currently placed at Kroger in the mobile team there. I develop large enterprise applications such as Kroger and all the way down to greenfield startup applications, new code base kind of things for people. And I'm a constant new tech trier outer. I'm constantly bugging Patrick with like, hey, have you seen this library? Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this framework? And I have like 10,000 new projects in Android Studio with like one screen doing nothing. So I've got a pretty good hit rate on some things I select, so I think Epoxy is definitely one that is good to know about. So first off, RecyclerView. It's great, right? RecyclerView does so much stuff for us. It's probably one of the most powerful layout tools we have in Android. Get infinite scrolling lists, item decoration, swipe handling, automatic change animations, horizontal, vertical, and grid layouts, and so many more things. RecyclerView gives you the power to do all this. And RecyclerView is pretty good. Section list requires quite a bit more code to write. Click handling is complicated. Multiple view types make adapters super long. You have to write view holders for everything. And then RecyclerViews, they could be better. View holders don't provide much flexibility outside of RecyclerViews. They're not kind of reusable in other views. RecyclerViews are kind of overkill for static content. Even though a menu or a settings option would, a menu or settings screen would be really good for RecyclerView, it's kind of a pain to get set up that way. And diffutil is useful, but adapters with many view types kind of becomes super hard to write diffutil. So, get to the point. What if we had like a RecyclerView plus, like the next version of RecyclerView, give you so much stuff. It handles complex views and does all the diffing for you automatically, allows custom views to be useful in your RecyclerView and in other views. It works with Java, but looks really great in Kotlin, and it made changing and creating RecyclerViews stupid simple. So, yes, give us that. Yes, please. So that's where Epoxy comes in. Epoxy is a library maintained by Airbnb. It was written by this guy Eli Hart and some other folks there. I don't think Eli is still at Airbnb, but he's still a maintainer on the project. It's a very active project, so you don't have to worry about it dying anytime. It has all those features I mentioned, plus a lot more I don't even know about because, I'm just getting used to it myself. So we're just going to build the screen, right? Does this look like a screen you need RecyclerView for? No, right? It just says hello world. So, static content doesn't need to change. It says one thing. So, can you guys see that very well at all? Code. Yeah. So you got your RecyclerView. You have your this is in the fragment. On view created. You just set up your adapter. You have a basic view holder that's got your set text method, and then your adapter just, returns 1 for how many items you have, and just sets stuff up in the holder. Not really anything crazy going on there. So what does this look like with Epoxy? So this is the view. So this is called basic row. This looks like a custom view, looks just like something like a linear layout. You have your fields set up, like this one just has a title view, and it's got this set title one down here. So the things that are not just plain Android here are, you see the model view annotation and the text prop annotation. So the model view annotation just kind of lets Epoxy know about the view. It uses annotation processing to kind of generate some helper functions for you. And then text prop lets Epoxy know that this is a settable text field. So it'll just make some extra nice stuff for you there. And then this is what the fragment would look like for you. Same stuff with the RecyclerView. You set it all up the same. So in Kotlin, Epoxy has this extension function on their Epoxy RecyclerView. I don't know if it might just be it might not even be an extension. It might just be a function called build models with. So it doesn't show the type hints on Carbon, but the Lambda parameter there is called an Epoxy controller, and the Epoxy controller is basically something that takes in your model views. The model views are like this guy. So what Epoxy generated for me based on this code is this function here, this basic row. So this kind of creates a nice DSL that you can lay out items with. So it's got the ID, that it uses that for recycling, and then the title is generated from the set title method there. So that wouldn't exist if we didn't use that text prop. So those two, this snippet of code and these two pieces of code make the same thing, and that just hello world fragment.
Does it make view types better, or
what?
I like view types like if you have a list of 20 things, and whenever this item breaks, you have to do like a sub row, a total for.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that kind of stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. So you might be saying that's not enough. That doesn't really sell me on it or anything. So let's do something a bit more complex. We have more than one thing. Every third row is a different color: blue, magenta, magenta, blue, magenta, magenta. So plain RecyclerView looks like this. Just some different logic in the onBind view holder. We added a set text color. Super fun. Normal RecyclerView code we've all written before. But this is what it looks like in Epoxy. So if you look here, that controller, you can, since this is just Kotlin code running in here, you can put control flow in there. So right here I have from 0 to 10 for each, use that 0 to 10 index, and then set the title color based on every third one. And then we also added another more generic property at the top, set title color. So that's using the model prop annotation. That's like text prop, but you can set any value. Text prop just has some nice helpers for text. So, why is this any better? It might not even look very good. So you might be trying to boo me. So what did we actually do? Or what was the benefit of that? So we were able to bring control flow into the UI rendering. That might sound not too exciting, or you should be able to do that some other ways, but there's a lot of use cases I can think of where that's super helpful. We were able to have rendering logic read just like normal code. It's a lot more obvious what this is going to do in my mind than what this is going to do. I don't know. And then we were also able to add more functionality inside a custom view. So if we were using that hello world or basic row somewhere else outside of RecyclerView, we still got that method. We didn't add a useless method to a view holder, basically. So even more custom stuff. So here's multiple view types interlaced between the two, a couple more custom views added, and some actual data populating them. So I made this purposely look really long because once you start adding more and more custom views, your stuff does get really long. So I'm not expecting you to read this. Just know this doing RecyclerView stuff. It's doing, switching on the view type, switching on the view type on the bind, and then casting the holder as the type of holder you want it to be, and then setting the stuff up. So the point is, it's a lot of code. And this is what it looks like in Epoxy. I made the title detail card a custom view. So that's a reusable piece of code you can use anywhere in the app now. And it's got your two text props, set title, set detail. Makes for a nice little handy component there. And then with Epoxy, you guys see that I just told the controller I want a title detail card, name, and my name. Then I want that basic row that says here's some details, and I want the title detail card. So it's really easy to say I want to swap these in and out because it does them in the order you lay them out in. So if I wanted to put something in between that basic row and the age card, like a location card, I can just slam one in there and it works. I don't have to do a bunch of changes with like, okay, what index am I in now? What should I render here for this index? It's exactly what you see. So let's just add a button now. So like I said, click listeners and RecyclerViews, kind of annoying. Yeah, it's like, do I still have to write all this code? I was getting real annoyed with all the code I had to write when I was making the sample. So added a new view type, added a view holder with an interface for the button listener, and set the click listener to the button listener anytime the button listener changed. And then, made a new onCreate view holder with a new view type and everything. And just the amount of times I had to say like, oh yeah, I have to go do this now. Oh yeah, I have to go do this now. Like I almost forgot to update the amount of, get item count. I almost forgot to do that. It wouldn't have shown if I didn't do that, right? Epoxy. So I made a button card. Actually, this one won't work because there are 4 here and I only put 3. So I did write a bug in the RecyclerView code. I didn't mean to do that. So I made a button card. It's, another reusable component, another custom view. Doesn't do too much, but this one's using callback prop. So callback prop will let you use things like on click listeners, other kind of callbacks. And it gave me a weird compile error when I used it. And it was actually kind of nice once I saw what the compile error was. So I had on click listener without the nullable question mark there, and it yelled at me for it. And it said, all callback props must be nullable. I was like, when you think about that, it's kind of helpful to know because you do want to remove callbacks sometimes, so you can just null them out. So it's nice to have. And you don't always have click listener set up. So it's nice that they let me know that. And then, this is the DSL. It's got the button card added at the bottom, and it's got I could throw in a lambda for that button click listener and just tell it to toast. It said you pressed it. So, recycling code. That was all static layout. This is like infinitely scrolling stuff. So, this is the one I still have up. So I can go to presentation mode. I didn't even write the code for this in RecyclerView because I didn't want to. So up here, I just have this person data class. They've got a name and an age. And then I've got this free function called make people that just returns as many people as you want. It names them person, number, whatever number they are, because that is the most efficient way to name people, and we should start moving towards that. And then it gives them a random age between 0 and 90. So in my basic fragment here, I've got my Epoxy RecyclerView, which that is a subclass of RecyclerView. So you can do all the same things like adding item decorations, all the touch helper stuff. You can still do all that. And then on my onView created here, I've got my build models with call, and I just say for person in make people, title card for their name, title card for their age, and I can run that, and here it is. Recycles and everything, scrolls fast, super smooth. Person 0 has an age of 35, person 1 has an age of 34. So if I want to do other things, like say, I don't know, every fifth person do something. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to do something with the number here. For indexed. What's that? For each indexed. Make people 50 for each indexed. Do like the index and then person. Okay, yep. So, if index mod 5 equals 0, we can throw in a basic row that says, give it ID of index, and say, happy birthday. And title color, you can set that up. So it gives you all the auto completion of all the functions. Nice developer red. So first, 0, mod 5, that makes sense. So in between that, it'll say happy birthday there. So every fifth person, it'll do that, and that's important. So with RecyclerView, you're always working with indexes of the RecyclerView. This, I'm working with index of my data. So even though it's not every fifth row, it's every fifth person I'm doing something, right? So that's kind of an important distinction. So if I wanted to do like a click listener for, the person, I could either pass in the person directly because I have access to it here and say like on clicked of person, or I can say on clicked of index, and I would have the index of my data set already. I wouldn't have to say, not accounting for headers, not accounting for other view types, not accounting for this, where I have to go in and do all that complex math to get, what I'm trying to get out of my data set to tell it that I got clicked. It's just something I've had plenty of pain with before, and I don't know if you guys have, but working off the data set to build the views versus working off the views to remember what data set you bound to it. It's pretty helpful. So yeah, that was a little sidetrack that I didn't plan. Yeah, so RecyclerView, nah, I didn't want to write that. And then Epoxy, super simple. So in summary, RecyclerView provides very powerful, flexible layout tool. Gets complicated very quickly. Writing RecyclerView when Epoxy is around sort of feels like writing like assembly when you have a higher level language available, in my mind. Epoxy allows for component-based design. So if you were looking at the views I was writing, those are reusable components. You can shove them anywhere in the app. You can put them in static layouts. You don't have to just use them in Epoxy. Epoxy allows for quick iteration on changes in views. So like we just added that happy birthday card every 5th row. So kind of complicated business logic. It was pretty easy to add. And Epoxy hides all the manual labor around what view goes where. What view goes where and what index it's actually at. So you get a nice representation of what your view will actually be comprised of. So it's pretty easy to read, you know, it's pretty easy to read what this is, you know, gonna look like versus, you know, reading this code down here. It's like, okay, I've got some view holders and it looks like this, and then I've got all of this code. It's like you kind of get lost in the weeds of what's actually going to render in the recycler view. Like when view type is this, do this. When view type is that, do that. It's just kind of a pain. So going further, Epoxy can be used for basically any screen in an app. It can be static content. It can be infinite content. You know, paging views, stuff, things like that. So this can be used so much so that Airbnb created MVRX, which is a reactive and opinionated architecture on Android that when combined with Epoxy, it makes screens and state really easy to manage. So if you wanted to know what some MVRX code looks like with Epoxy, this is their sample from GitHub. So they're doing state-driven rendering. So they've got their hello world state up there. They've got a view model, which is, you know, something that's familiar, performs logic on the view. Basically connects the states with the view. And then it's got the rendering down at the bottom there in the actual fragment. So you can see it might look something a bit like Flutter, something a bit like React Native, but this is pure Android, 100% Kotlin. So if you want to write that kind of reactive style view, then you see even right here, this is the big function right here, that set state. I know if you've worked with React or Flutter, you know all about that set state and how important that is. And you know, that's super nice to have your view re-render itself when something changes. So what this is doing is it's just appending on a exclamation point every time someone hits a button. So hello world, you know, exclamation point. So that's basically it. I didn't really have too much besides that. Does anyone have like any questions on what you can't do? Yeah.
Is everything you can do with, do they keep the Kotlin and Java side in sync?
Yeah, anything you can do with this, it works in Java, works in Kotlin. The Kotlin stuff does provide the extension function for that build models with. So some of the Java stuff you'll have to do a bit more wiring up yourself, but that's life.
And I remember Alex, I forget his name, at Kroger. You said his name before.
Morgan?
Yes. He was really big on butter knife.
Yeah.
Does this tie in with butter knife, or are they two nothing to do with each other?
So you can use butter knife with this. I think the only thing is if you're using butter knife, you have to use the butter knife plugin for R2 to generate the layout files, or that could only be if it's a library project. It says in the documentation. But basically what you could do to use Butterknife is, instead of these find view by IDs here, you could just annotate your views with that, and it would work all the same. And the big thing is, these are just Android custom views. There's nothing special about them. Anything you can do in an Android custom view, you can do it and plug it into Epoxy. And I think that's like the real power of it, because they didn't force you to use something that, you know, kind of makes sense to them. They're like, we've got these good tools with RecyclerView, custom views. Let's give them a nice API to work with. Any other questions?
You're currently using a stack data set. What does it look like if your data set changes and you need to notify data set change and that type of stuff?
Notify data set change. Good question. So, pretty sure that is what you want. Request model build is basically the notify data set change. Okay. So if your data set changes based on a click or based on data coming in from a network call, you call this request model build. You might say, well, what if it's just an insert? What if it's a delete? I don't want to, go overboard building everything up again. Well, the nice thing about Epoxy is with these stable IDs that you're given everything, it figures out what needs to be rebuilt, what doesn't need to be rebuilt, and it does it on a background thread. So once it does it once it finishes the diff on the background thread, it re-renders everything, and you get the nice smooth scrolling without any jank. So they really prioritize that. Yeah. So I can actually, and that just makes me think of opening up Chrome. It's a bad idea. This one. So this is just a Medium article that they published in their engineering blog. This is by Eli Hart, the guy I mentioned earlier. So basically, the way that they design their screens now is component by component. So they've got this header with a picture and some description and a view guidebook link, and then a carousel, a list of carousels, and then a filter suggestion. So they're able to build these components individually, have them be reusable throughout the app, and plug them in where they need them. So that's a super powerful tool, especially if you have a strong design language like Airbnb does. Someone or enterprise trying to build up their brand in a certain way. So you can standardize the type of views you show, but still provide a unique customer experience based on how you arrange them in Epoxy. So a big thing that I thought this would be super useful for is we use a lot of feature toggles at Kroger. So we can flip features on and off server side if something goes wrong or we're trying to test something out. So you could use feature toggles right in this, like we did here. We conditionally rendered something based on an index. That could easily be, if, brand new top secret feature is enabled, you just flip it off, user wouldn't see it anymore. So it's really, really exciting for me in that way, and that may just be because I've worked in that problem space for a little bit. But yeah.
Did they make something for iOS also?
I don't care. No, I don't think so. I think they said they had something similar to MVRX. I don't think they have something similar to Epoxy. I think they might just be going for that architecture pattern. They might build something on Collection View. Not sure. I don't follow them too much.
What if you want to do more complex view? So from what I say, this is more like column, like a detail and a detail.
Mm-hmm.
You want to view a detail and then something else on the same line, or more component in one view that have to do with that.
Yeah, so what you could do there is just design your custom views that way and have them be able to be rendered in the, so you can, I would say design it kind of like row by row of if features. So say you had like a row that had some kind of grid in it. I would just design that row as a custom view, and then you could put the rendering code in Epoxy and just have it do the whole thing. So I would kind of force it to be a column, you know. So, and then they also have support for grid layout. I'm not sure about staggered grids or anything like that, but they do have, like, it's a recycler view when it comes down to it. Anything you can do with a recycler view, you can do with this. Anyone else?
Do they have any fancy data binding integrations?
Yes, they do. I have not worked with it because I don't work with data binding that much. But they have a super nice documentation page. And they've got all these add-ons over here. So basics, basic usage, Epoxy with custom views, Epoxy with data binding, and Epoxy with view holders. So if you already have view holders from your recycler views, you can reuse those. So let's look at what data binding support looks like. Looks like you have to add another library, Epoxy data binding pattern. So I guess that's your how they know what code you make. Where's some code examples? There we go. How's that look? Look good? Looks like something you'd use, maybe? I don't know. Yeah, so they've also got support for, grid support, carousels. They've got this library called Paris that I haven't looked too much into, but it's dynamic styling. Sounds kind of cool. So you can give it a style builder, it looks like. You can dynamically style your views. Seems neat. Paris? I don't know. It's just what they name their library. Their Airbnb. I don't know. Cyclic adapters, paging support, grouping models, swipe and drag, all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah. Really good documentation. Like, I'm pretty thankful for this, that it exists, because it's it's easy to follow. Yeah.
How big is their library? If you have a small app that you want to add this to, how much is it?
Like megs wise?
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, like, is it a very large library?
I'm not sure. I know something you have to look out for is they do use annotation processing, so it's going to generate some Java behind the scenes. I actually haven't looked into it. I can look at the size of this sample app I have and see if it's like abnormally large. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Yeah, 7 gigs. I can't find it. How do I do that again?
You long press the icon.
Long press on the icon?
Hit that.
Aha.
4.6.
Yeah. 4.6, but I've got some images in there too.
So are people starting to write projects only in Kotlin and not in the Java side?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Drag your APK.
What?
Drag to build APK into Android Studio.
Oh, what? I'm sorry.
Drag your APK that got built.
Into Android Studio?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right to the APK and apply services.
Like from the build folder?
Yeah.
Here, come help me with that.
If you go to your build folder.
Well, I know. I am sure, but it is fast.
Under app.
Oh, app.
It's not a one-for-one.
Outputs.
Outputs, APK, debug. I gotta just drag that over here.
Kotlin.
So at Kroger, are you doing something so that every everybody in the group? Like if you do one of these using the epoxy,
Uh-huh.
and the rest of the group doesn't know epoxy, they're sort of screwed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not using this currently in that project. If it was something that that's kind of just any library at Kroger, you have to present it to the whole team, kind of teach them how to use it.
Okay, 'cause back in the old days, it was just go out, pull something in, and run with it, and then.
No, we've got processes to handle that.
Double click on classes, do that next.
This one?
Most of your space is going to Android X.
That's Kotlin. Looks like Airbnb added 120. Hey, Greg. It added 120 kilobytes. Yeah. And 1,000 methods. So, if you care about text. Okay, cool. Yeah. More questions?
Can you rotate your sample app?
Rotate my sample app. Sure, let's see what happens. Scroll to the top. No, I didn't ProGuard it. Because ProGuard takes a long time to set up and I hate it.
Program goes away.
Soon?
I think it's 3.5 or 3.3.
Huh.
As the new one, they still, R8 is, experimental still.
So yeah. That's it. Thank you.